Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka blenderhd, blenderhd. Join with you on Mondays. It's every Monday. It's Mondays with James McCool. Mondays with McCool. Paydirt_DFS. The co-author with me on the theory of daily fantasy sports. It's a 15-hour audio masterclass. You can pick up at theoryofdfs.com. So, James, NBA's gotten to the point. Can we trust the coaches anymore now? I mean, now, like the injury report, we can't trust. Now we can't trust the coach. I mean, we can never trust the coaches. I see everyone in chat. I don't know if people like Rashawn Holmes is doubtful. He's not. There's no chance he's playing. And then he's playing. And then it's like, okay, well, thank you for it being the late game. And then now I got to switch everything around. So, I know we've mentioned multiple times that like this NBA season, NBA DFS is normally like chaos to some extent, but not to necessarily this extent. Yesterday, because the Kings game was the late game, were you planning around situations where Barnes would be out or Barnes would be in, or Holmes would be out or Holmes would be in those types of situations? Or are you more inclined to, like, I know we say to expect the unexpected, at least like the reasonable unexpecteds, but at some point, like when it's like the last game on the slate, at what point do you just say, like, I don't screw Luke Walton, I don't care what he says?
Well, one, the Rashawn Holmes situation was super screwy yesterday because he went from questionable earlier to doubtful, like more close to doubtful, and then he's going to play. And it's like, how do you downgrade somebody and then upgrade them all the way up to playing? It's one thing when you can't trust the coaches. It's another thing when the coaches just straight up lie. And that's the part that's the most frustrating, is these coaches just straight up lying. And like this,
are they lying though? Because I think Doc Rivers
is lying.
No, Doc Rivers, I think, doesn't know what's going on.
Okay, so Doc Rivers is an idiot or lying, and either one.
We're like an idiot. We had that slate where he was like, I don't. Embiid's on the injury report, and he's questionable, and Doc Rivers in the press conference before the game, like at 5:30 or whatever.
Like I don't know why he would be questionable.
There's anything. I never know there was anything wrong with Embiid. Like I don't even know why you're asking the question. And then like 3 minutes before lock, he's out.
Guy's a moron.
Like what?
And then the Steph Curry situation the other day, where it was just like out of nowhere, they were just like, oh yeah, he just doesn't want to play today. Like after lock. It's so dumb. But regarding that, I think that there's a couple things that I take into effect. I mean, yesterday I cared a little bit about the Rashawn Holmes situation. I was pretty conservative on the Whiteside projection, but like if he plays, obviously Whiteside is not going to play hardly anything at all. And if he doesn't, then Whiteside plays maybe 20 minutes. So I didn't really care.
Bielitsa. I mean,
well, and then there's Bielitsa, and then there's Bagley. Like there are the other guys, but
and then Bagley's on a minutes limit, and then
plays 31
minutes. Limit is 48. So
yeah, for sure. It's so asinine. But I didn't care so much about the Rashawn Holmes situation. I cared a little bit more about the Harrison Barnes situation because I did like De'Aaron Fox. But I think that another circumstance that I care a little bit about is how many games are on a slate. Last night, there were enough games on the slate that I didn't really have to care that much about the Rashawn Holmes situation because he's been out and because those forwards and the centers are kind of like priced appropriately for where they should be, even if he is out. I didn't have to care that much about it. If it were like a 4-game slate, then I have to pay a lot more attention to it because that's one entire situation. That's a quarter of the slate that can be minimally to drastically affected by a player either being in or out. Or if Harrison Barnes and Rashawn Holmes are both out, then we have a real situation where we have to worry about it. So I think that the amount of games on a slate, that certainly has a decent piece of the pie for me in caring about situations like that. But for the most part, like I wasn't caring so much about my player pool in regards to that game last night specifically.
Right. Milo Kaminsky in the chat says, Luke Walton has lied his entire career. He and other dumb coaches think manipulating the injury report is an advantage. How could it? Can it be an advantage? I don't understand. I just don't understand. Like, it's our game plan for this, like you're playing basketball. Like what does it matter? Oh, we went to shoot around and thought they think, I guess that's the point that Milo's saying, is that they think that they're being sneaky when it probably has no effect whatsoever.
No, unless it's like a massive, massive downgrade. I mean, if we're talking, if they're keeping like 3 guys that they're like, oh, they're definitely not going to play, but I'm going to put them questionable. If we're talking something like that, then maybe, or no, if they're 3 questionable and they are definitely going to play, and the coach just like, oh, well, he's really ailing, like Anthony Davis and LeBron James, both really ailing. And the other team is like, well, maybe they're not going to have them. I don't know.
Well, how did they change anything? Like, what do they change? Oh, AD and LeBron aren't playing, so that means what? Like, what? Then what do we do other than play our starters as normal and just obviously don't have to play against worse players? Like,
well, maybe if it's like a size advantage or something like that. I'm just trying to find.
You get the starting lineups. Who cares?
I'm just trying to find something, anything. Like, I don't know.
15 minutes before tip-off or whatever. It's not like you don't get the starting line. Oh, I see that this guy, this is our starting 5. And what's the worst case scenario? You take a timeout, 15 seconds in, and you replace the guy? I mean, really?
No, I know. I'm trying to find something.
But yesterday, we didn't get lied to with the DSJ. Everyone played DSJ yesterday. I was starting for the Pistons. Like, the coach literally said, we're going to start out with them, but it's going to be a committee. We'll see how it goes. And you know what happens when you play Dennis Smith Jr. chalk, right? He couldn't even be the 4th point guard for the New York Knicks. So what do you expect out of the guy? Like,
no.
And David Lee comes in and he just, I'm just going to play the entire half after DSJ has 1 point.
Dennis Smith Jr.
At least then, James, if you looked at what the coach said, the coach didn't lie. He said he's starting, but it's a hot hand. It's just like NFL. It's kind of like, just because you see Ronald Jones out there for the first drive doesn't mean that Leonard Fournette's not going to get most of the carries the rest of the game. It's just, who cares who's starting? Just that I'm starting with this guy, and if he happens to do well, I guess we'll continue. If not, then you see some other guys.
Well, it brings up this point that I've been trying to make about when these backups come into a starting role. It's like, dude, they're backups for a reason. And Dennis Smith Jr. is a real like Dennis Smith Jr.
He has a name though. When he was on the Mavericks, he was an up and coming, like, oh, this guy's a flashy guy, and didn't realize that he really can't play basketball.
For sure. So Dennis Smith Jr. is like the most athletic guy at your local gym. Like, for sure, he is way better than most of the dudes that are like on the court, and like he does cool stuff and he gets flashy steals and like, but his teams never win. And then like it's just this whole thing where everybody's like, yeah, man, I want to take Dennis Smith Jr. And like, you're just gonna lose. Dennis Smith Jr. went into 80% chalk last night in the $100. 80% chalk after scoring 0 real life points the night before and having basically his ceiling of 25 fantasy points because of 6 blocks and steals, and then was 80% chalk. Dennis Smith Jr. just don't do Dennis Smith Jr., man. It's always
only 4,000. What's wrong with that?
There were other people that were 4,000 that you could.
Yeah, and I rostered them, and they did bad also. So I mean,
Patrick Beverley did slightly better.
Oh,
okay. Slightly better. It could have been a different.
McDaniels didn't. Why did I play that guy?
Neither did Corey Joseph, and I played Corey Joseph as well, and he got like 5 fantasy points.
Did any 4K guy other than like Jeffries do well at all?
No, not really.
Like, did it really matter?
The game last night was to play mid-range, and I thought that the game last night was to play mid-range, and I liked a lot of the mid-range guys, and then I had the floor games from my mid-range guys and the ceiling games from the other mid-range guys, and that's what you get when you play mid-range.
Yeah, I did the up and down, and that didn't work.
No, nothing worked last. I don't think anybody actually made money last night. Nobody.
I was one. I look at my scores and I go, who did score well? I lost. Yes, I lost on all 3 sites. But I'm but I'm looking at other lineups and they have 4 snowflakes too. And I'm like, how did anyone win? Yes, apparently people did win, but it wasn't me. It wasn't anyone else that I know, or I don't know what lineups you had to put together to get them, because it seemed like everything had a snowflake in it.
It's one of those slates where, like, I think it was Shit My Money on Twitter. He tweeted, he was like, the people who look at results DB and try to take results from this slate are just going to be terrible for 2 weeks because like nothing good worked yesterday.
Right. Well, you had to play guys that were like third off the bench and managed to get blowout run. Like those, like you look at the winning lineups and go, how do you come up with that? I mean, that was a 0.4% on this and a 0.4% on that. And then you jamming 3 guys from one team. And it's like, okay.
Congratulations on your bank.
Right. Those are just the slates that you lose. It's just like, okay, I'm never going to make a lineup that's going to do well in that case.
Yeah.
But talking about player pools, we had a conversation in the RotoGrinders Discord, which is premium. So I'm in there all the time. Maybe not over the past weekend, but I'm in there usually. So sign up for RotoGrinders Premium with the link in the description. You get $10 off your first month. And I'm always in there answering questions, talking that throwing out news, right? Just like with Dennis Smith Jr., kind of like, it's supposed to be a committee. But there was a discussion there over the weekend about player pools. Like if you're going to multi-enter, I'm not talking about if you're going to make one lineup or anything. I'm talking 20 lineups, 50 lineups, something like that, 100 plus lineups, of the value of curating a player pool that you want to make your lineups out of, or leaving the pool as is and letting like serendipity happen where you have the numbers. I always preach the value of projections, right? I mean, right now I'm going to refresh. I mean, we have like the algorithmic projections, I believe, 4:42 a.m. Yeah. So no manual adjustments. So this doesn't mean all that much yet. But like if I go down to if I go down to Gary Trent Jr. and he's 36 minutes, 26 fantasy point median, right? 13 to 39 range, but it's 16% smash, -5 RGV. Like this is typically not someone I'm targeting, but could he possibly end up in the 98th out of 100th lineup? Possibly. It's possible that he still fits even projected so low. Me personally, I curate a player pool, but it's typically a decent enough. Like I'm building the player pool from the higher projected guys, what positions I need. And if there are lower projected guys, I want to see like high ceiling potential, high smash. Like they may have if I look down here. So for instance, like Jalen Brunson, I'm just pulling one out. The RGV plus minus salary adjusted is -3. Garrett Temple, -3.6. Yeah, why don't I just mention Garrett Temple? He's someone I won 100,000 with. Why not? I have an affinity to playing Garrett Temple. But he doesn't project well. But I mean, is shooting guard going to be a weak position today? Maybe. He has a 22% smash. So I mean, like Jimmy Butler, on the other hand, projects well for his price at 9,200. But obviously, I'm going to still need like a 4K, 5K player at 22%, at a little over a fifth of the time, almost a quarter of the time. Garrett Temple's going to put up a 30-point score or so. So he technically doesn't project well, but I could include that type of player in my player pool. In comparison, are you more of I just leave everyone in my pool and kind of whatever happens? Obviously, you're going to be changing exposures. You're going to look, you're going to be looking for good lineups, but unlike me, I start from excluding everyone and then bringing back like all the players that I want in. So instead of having 200 in my pool, I may have 38. And it's like whatever could be made out of those 38, I'm fine with. And if I miss out on someone that could still fit in and it's still a good projected lower owned lineup, like I'm just missing out on that. Like I'm making the decision that this is my pool and that's it. Because there was an argument in the Discord that by doing that, you're limiting your ability to get outlier type lineups. And it goes to the fact that I don't like players, right? Because technically, if I'm just excluding everyone and bringing 38 guys back in, like those are the 38 guys I like, quote unquote. That should I not be doing that, and should I just be leaving everything in and just whatever happens? My only concession is the 38 guys or whatever that I'm bringing back are most likely the 38 guys that are going to be in the lineups, even if I left everyone in the player pool. Because I'm bringing back high projected, lower owned smash guys that the likelihood of Gary Trent at 6K being in the lineup that I'm building is probably zero, almost zero anyway. So not having him in at all, what does it make a difference? So what how do you deal with that? It seems like you're the type of person that screw the player pool. It is what it is.
No, actually, I do like to curate mine. But I will do runs first with the entire player pool in, so that I can just kind of see who is coming into the lineups. And then I'll start kind of shaving off. I have in my projections over at Pater, I have a lineup HQ export, which utilizes the XVal factor as the exposure cap for players. So automatically there, like I'm going to be mostly exposed to guys that project well for me and have high GPP score thresholds, so high smash scores. And you kind of nailed it of saying, like, it doesn't really matter if I curate my pool or not. Like, I'm probably going to get the guys that project well anyway. Curating the pool is really just a way to remove those guys that I really don't want. Like, if I was hand building a lineup, I wouldn't end up with Gary Trent Jr. If I was hand building a lineup, like, I'm not going to end up with Malik Monk today. Like, as of now, he has like a 14% chance to be a top overall scorer, but he's projected for 16 fantasy points. Like,
right, but isn't there a line? Aren't there days where Malik Monk puts up 35 and you've now, even though he's 14%, he's not zero, right? Isn't there there is a lineup that exists that fits your parameters that Malik Monk would be in, and you're choosing to exclude that. The argument against the player, that curating your player pool, is that you're now putting in your own bias into it.
Well, I'm not.
Yeah, but how are you not? How are you not by saying I can't play Malik Monk?
Well, because specifically, you're right. He is going to be there around 15% of the time in my models. And that's cool. Like, 15% of the time is not the worst. On a slate where there is very minimal value, maybe he ends up there just simply because I can't build lineups without somebody who's $4,700. But at 15% of the time, that's a pretty low percent of the time compared to other value plays that are on the slate. I mean, just as of now, Desmond Bane at 3,900 on DraftKings has a 28% chance to get there. Mike Muscala, 38, has a 30% chance to get there. Anthony Simmons, 3,700, has a 23%. So it's not that I am including a bias and saying, oh, well, I think that Malik Monk is not good and is not going to get there. I'm just listening to what the numbers say, and I'm giving myself the best chance by the numbers, the best percentile chance in my lineups to end up having a GPP winning score. It's not a bias. It's just building lineups based off of the best percentages. And if it does,
well, James, most likely in your scenario, that with Malik Monk at 4,700, it's very unlikely that even if you build 100 lineups that you even get him at all. And if you're not going to get him in your first 100 lineups and you're only playing 50, like why even have him in the pool? Why even have him there? Right? I mean, like it really comes down to what you said in the beginning. So for instance, I'm going to go right now. I'm going to go to build rules and I'm going to build 100 lineups. Number of unique players, 1, just whatever, just default. Like anyone that come to me, I'm building 100 lineups now. Default projections on as of 4:42 a.m. Whatever. Anyone that comes up, even once, to me, should be in your player pool, right? Would you agree? Like if it would be in the top 100 optimal lineups?
Yes,
to some extent, right?
Pretty close. Yeah. I mean, there's going to be those fringe guys. I think that eventually what I'll do, like after I have run that first run of just like a raw baseline, like whatever run, is I'll then go in and I'll usually look at the guys who show up the least. And I'll say, okay, well, does this player actually have a ceiling? Like, can they actually get there a relative amount of the time? And if not, like if they have a very skinny range of outcomes where like, it's a 3K player that is projected for 13 fantasy points and he has a ceiling of 19. I don't really care about that guy. I'll kick him out. Even if he projects okay, I'll kick him out. But for the most part, like 90% of those guys are going to stay.
I got 57% PJ Tucker. Do you like that?
Never.
Ever? He's 3,500.
He is 3,500. What do I, man?
We have him and our initial, very, very early initial, we have him at an 18.67 median. Seems generous for PJ Tucker.
Seems generous for PJ Tucker. I would probably no, I don't want 57% of him. Maybe I want like.
Oh, but he would be in your pool. We don't care about percentages now. It's more the fact of like I go down here and I see THT 2%, Robin Lopez 2%, Derek Favors 5%, Jalen Brunson 8%, Wesley Matthews 14%, Tim Hardaway Jr. 26%, Royce O'Neal, Theo Maledon, Sterling Brown. Like, these aren't names that I like to roster, but of course it's a 6-game slate. We don't have really much value opening up yet, which you never know what could happen. The point is not the percentages. The point is that, like, why can't I have Jay Crowder in my pool or Taylor Porter Tucker? Like, if they come up in the top 100 optimals based on your projections, like that, I think the argument, the middle ground of that argument of curating the player pool versus not, is you should look at this and go, I probably would have never picked Jalen Brunson, but if he shows up in 8% of the top 100, I should probably include him in my play. I may build 50 lineups and he may not end up in any of them, but he
might be in that tail end.
Right, yeah. But he should at least be in my pool. I think that's the key. I think people concern themselves way too much. Like in the chat right now, someone's asking about what's the size of your player pool. Like, the size doesn't matter. That's what my wife said. The size doesn't matter. It's just it's the motion of the ocean, or whatever that phrase is. But it doesn't. It really depends on how much diversification you want. If you don't mind playing 40%, if you don't mind playing 50% PJ Tucker, then you could have 18 guys in your pool, right? Especially at the weaker position. But if you're like, I don't want to risk my entire slate on PJ Tucker, I'm gonna have to find some different lines that don't contain him, and I may need to increase my player pool to do so. So, to me, the size is really a byproduct more of the diversification than on like what strategically matters. Like, we could look on this slate currently, like from a pay up option, and we have Luka, we have Lillard, LeBron, Westbrook. They're all point guard eligible. Obviously, LeBron has small forward eligibility. We have Beal and Levine at shooting guard. Like, if you wanted to say, based on our current projections, like the worst projected out of the 10K players is Westbrook. I don't know what his ownership's going to be. We don't have ownership or anything. The best out of this bunch for their price is LeBron. But if you said, I want to build 20 lineups and fade LeBron completely, that's perfectly fine. Like, now you're making a strategic choice. You're not making a choice based on like the projections. Like, if LeBron ends up being 35, 40% owned this slate, and you say, I want my leverage spot to be LeBron in all of my lineups, and then go, you don't even have to play Luka or Lillard. I mean, it's just a matter of like what you want to do strategically. But to me, I don't consider that to be a player pool thing. Like, I may not X out LeBron. If I'm building 100 lineups and I'm like, I'm going to go under on LeBron, I'm going to build more non-LeBron lineups, I still leave him in the pool, but maybe I cap him at 10%. So I'm only playing that few amount of LeBron lineups. But it's not the type of thing where I'm just Xing guys out left and right and going, I don't want to play Levine. But that also doesn't mean that he's going to end up in any of my lineups, but he's still going to be in my player pool. There may not be a lineup with Bradley Beal or Russell Westbrook in my 50 lineups that I'm making, not because I don't like them, not because I'd X them or whatever. They're in my pool. It's just that compared to other people's projections, they don't end up fitting in lineups. I probably wouldn't have much Donovan Mitchell at 8,700 on this slate. Now, if I build 60 lineups, maybe he does end up in 2. Maybe, but maybe he doesn't. So even having a player pool, like let's say you have a player, I have a player pool of 60. That doesn't mean you have to use all 60 players. Like that's just like here's the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. And maybe you're condensing it so it's easier on you. It's easier to make groups if you want to make groups. So unless like in this 100 lineup build that I built, like I will go through, like I've shown this. I have a premium video, if you're a premium member. And I show this all the time. What I do is like I go in, I'll exclude all, and then I'll go team by team. And who do I want to play? I'm using the term want, but it's really who's the higher projected player. So I'll sort by like smash percentage and go, okay, here's Wendell Carter Jr. for the Bulls, right? Wendell Carter, Zach LaVine, Garrett Temple. And you're like, well, why not Kobe White? It's like, I'll come back to it. If I need another point guard, shooting guard, maybe I do include him in. Or maybe I say, okay, I don't mind. I may not even use any of them. But then I don't have Thad Young, Patrick Williams, Denzel Valentine, because these guys project like awful. Like these are just all like they're unlikely to ever appear in any lineups at their prices. Then I look on Houston, and with Oladipo out, and who knows what's going on with Boogie Cousins, and it's like, okay, Wall projects well, Gordon projects well, Jayshawn Tate doesn't project as well, but he has a high smash. And then it's like, oh, PJ Tucker, Daniel House. And then maybe I look at this and I don't include those guys. I don't have House. I don't have Tucker. I don't have Sterling Brown. Maybe by the time I get through all the teams, I find out that like I don't have enough power forwards, right? Or I can't make I'm making very similar lineups over and over again because I don't have enough like cheap guys. And it's like, you know what would solve this? The fact that I don't have many power forwards and I don't have enough cheap guys. Damn it, I got to play some PJ Tucker. And that's where the 57% of the PJ Tucker comes from, because it's a lineup construction thing where like who else if you're not playing PJ Tucker, you're playing a power forward, cheaper power forward eligible player that projects worse than PJ Tucker. And you know how bad that player has to be to project worse than PJ Tucker, right? So you want that. So I know you may not have this exact process like what I'm doing on your end, but I think it feels like the discussion and the argument between curating a player pool, don't curating a player pool, how many players you have in the pool, they all end up in this. If you're thinking conceptually the same way, like I still think we're all doing the same thing.
Yeah, I think that you have a good enough grasp of building lineups and a good enough grasp of your own process that you don't have to curate a pool, because you can look at lineups and say, I would have built this by hand. I would argue that some people who are not as versed in building lineups and don't necessarily know how to play an optimizer as well as you do, curating a pool would probably be good for them. Yeah, you know how to play like a fiddle.
This is me playing an optimizer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you play it really well, and then people throw money at you. So,
right. I put my little guitar case out, and for some reason, people give me, I don't know.
Yeah.
Take my head to head. There it is.
I think that people who do not quite understand how to use optimizers as well, it can help them to curate their pool down and try to look at things a little bit more in a micro view, like solidify things and take things down a little bit, so that they can then look at things and say, okay, yeah, I would use Zach LaVine in a hand-built lineup. I would use LaMelo Ball in a hand-built lineup, and think of things that way, so that you can have kind of like some training wheels into building quote unquote hand-built lineups with the optimizer. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's perfectly. I always suggest people hand build 20 lineups and then goes an optimizer to build those 20. Like try to whatever you need to do to get those exact 20 lineups. You may not get it exactly, but that's how you should be thinking of using a tool like Lineup HQ. But when you say that, I'm used to an optimizer, but it's more about visualizing lineup construction. So I could look at a player pool and know that like Donovan Mitchell, I'm probably not going to have much of, or LaMelo Ball. Like PG is loaded like on high end options. So yeah, I mean, you could like, I'm more likely, like if you take a look here, I'm just looking at the figures. So in this 8K range, for instance, especially at the guard spots. So in this, we got Mitchell, Ball, SGA, Booker, Rozier, Wall, Paul, right? John Morant. Look how many point guards there are on this slate. It's ridiculous. But like LaMelo Ball is a 41 point median. Like, dude, John Wall is 45 for like 600 less based on our current projections. So it's very unlikely that I'm going to be getting a lot of LaMelo Ball when I have Wall available to me. I'm very unlikely to get Rozier when he projects 8 points lower than Wall for $100 more. Paul projects better. Even John Morant projects better. So it's like, it's very unlikely they'll have any Terry Rozier at all. Right? But I could also tell just by the RGV and the smash. Just I could tell that I'll have more SGA projects better than LaMelo, than Donovan, than Devin Booker, than Rozier, not better than Wall. So it's more likely to have SGA builds, Wall builds, if I go mid-range. If I don't go mid-range, I'm more likely to have like LeBron in the point guard spot. I don't know if there are cheap point guards on the slate, so I'll go to like point guard and see if I go by RGV or go by Smash. Like Eric Gordon, I guess, 6,300. That's not exactly cheap. Then we get to like Jalen Brunson, who has the volatility of that could be anything. So this seems like a slate to me, based on these projections, where you will be paying up at point guard. Okay? But then you take a look at the power forward spot, and like literally no one eligible at power forward has a positive plus minus salary adjusted value. No one. Not a single person in the player pool. Right? Smash percentage. We go here. Jayshawn Tate at 5,900. Do you really want to do that? Like, you take a look at this and you go, why aren't I just playing PJ Tucker? I mean, like, that's the reason. You look at this and you go, no one projects well. Any of these guys are like, anyone is fine. Is it worth paying up 8,500 for Porzingis? Well, not when there's no point guard value. So you're going to have building those types of lineups are going to give you much lower medians. I mean, you could do it. I mean, it'll be a leveraged lineup. But this is what I mean by going through. I could tell that if everything projected-wise stays on this slate, I'm going to have like Carmelo Anthony. I'm going to have some Bojan Bogdanovic, Isaiah Roby. And I think he'll be a little bit popular if Horford sits on a back-to-back. But you could visualize that. Like, I could tell that I'm not paying up at power forward. I could tell at small forward. I mean, look at small forward. The only two positive plus minus players are LeBron and Butler. Then everyone else is garbage. And it's like, who cares? So that's where Daniel House comes in. That's where Tim Hardaway Jr. and Royce O'Neal come in. Right? Because if no one projects well, it's more likely that I'm just going to use a cheap guy in that spot. And if you flip the build, it's going to be very hard to find cheap point. The problem is that it's going to be hard to find cheaper values at the guard spots today. I mean, as of right now, obviously it's 11:34 in the morning. These projections could change. If you're listening later, maybe there's tons of guard value by the time you listen to this. But as of right now, there isn't. So all these good projected players are in the guard spots, so I'm more likely to pay up there. But using that assessment, I could see what the lineup constructions are going to be. So when I curate my player pool, I already have all that in. I'm not surprised, right? When I build the 100 lineups and see 57% PJ Tucker and go like, well, I guess that's what I got to. You got to do what you got to do, right? Maybe I'll play some Daniel House. So I think I always say visualize lineup constructions, and this is what I mean. And once you could visualize like the chalk construction, what are more people doing? What are higher projected lineups going to look like? Then you're able to, okay, well, if I don't do this and I switch my salary allocation, cheap guard, high priced power forward, what lineup would that look like? And does that lineup have a high enough projection? And does it have enough leverage? And maybe you could play some of them. Maybe. You include them in your pool. Maybe I do have Porzingis in my pool. Maybe I do end up with one or two lineups. Maybe I don't. Maybe he's in my pool and he never gets into a lineup. So I think like when you curate the player pool, you're doing so with lineup construction in mind already. You're not doing it from I like this guy and I like that guy. Or this guy's I'm never going to play Bam Adebayo ever again. I don't care what he's projected. that type of thing. You're not doing that. You're just going by the numbers. You're on mute.
You're right. My cat was yelling.
Yeah, there's cat was agreeing with me.
yeah, she was agreeing with you. That's all it really comes down to is you're just looking to maximize your chances of doing well. It's not about selecting players based off of personal biases or based off of anchoring or like never playing Bam Adebayo and never playing PJ Tucker. Like you play what you need to play. On this slate specifically, like when I go over and I look at the way that the distributions are in terms of players that could possibly be top 10 overall on the slate, it's basically all point guard. Like it's a lot of point guard. It is some shooting guard. It is no power forward. So like, I already know just based on looking at that I'm going to be playing a lot of point guards that are expensive just because like, that's where players are actually going to do well. I know that I can kind of punt power forward. I know that I can kind of punt small forward. Like I'm going to be paying up a lot of the guards. But looking at things that way and saying, okay, I know that I'm going to have somebody cheap at power forward. I know that I'm going to have somebody cheap at small forward. Probably these forward spots, I'm going to have to punt these. That's where you're really going into your player pool and trying to make some informed decisions based off of the roster construction that you're going to need to have. For me, I also like to kind of look at how over or undervalued players are. Like it's really hard to do early for me in the morning. I can kind of assess like where players are valuable. I can assess where players are projecting well, but I don't usually like to build until I know some sort of idea of ownership projections because I like to take leverage into account. So like at that point, if I know that I need to punt power forward, but PJ Tucker is like 55% owned or something like that, I'm probably not going to play PJ Tucker. Like I know that power forward sucks. And I know that there's a lot of variance on these cheap guys, and especially on PJ Tucker, who can literally go 30 minutes without taking a shot. I like to take
recording a stat, not taking a shot, not even getting a rebound.
He can do a Tony Snell game, man. Like full on, he can do a Tony Snell game. So if I know that he's going to be really, really high owned, but I also know that roster construction is going to kind of necessitate me to punt that position, I'm going to need to be adding in some pretty scary forwards because I already know that the super chalk is super volatile. So I might as well have these lower owned guys that are also super volatile that give me a better chance at securing more relative value in my lineups while still sticking to an optimal roster construction. Because that's something that I think is undervalued. Is one thing that I like to tell people is go and try to look at the optimals, look at what the optimal construction is, and just find the guys that are the most volatile and try to pivot from there. You don't really have to think all that hard when you're playing NBA DFS because so much of it is projection and optimal based that you can make these really small pivots while sticking to an optimal roster construction and find a lot of success.
Right. I mean, like with PJ Tucker, like if you're like, oh, instead of PJ Tucker, I'm going to play Wesley Matthews in a small forward spot. It's like, well, Wesley Matthews could easily put up no points also. So if PJ Tucker is 40% owned and Wesley Matthews 3% owned, let's go take this. I mean, what's the worst thing that happens? PJ Tucker, he has a 40-point game? When does that happen? I mean, obviously it probably happened tonight. If PJ Tucker chalk night, and you're like, oh, there's no way I'm going to play that guy. And then he goes, and then it's one of those, 8 corner threes and 10 rebounds for no apparent reason.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have this fortune of getting not only Dennis Smith Jr. chalk night, but then followed by PJ Tucker chalk night, and that's incredible. So, yeah, I mean, just looking at my stuff, you have PJ Tucker at 3,500, or you have Cameron Johnson at 3,500, and I don't know, like they both probably have similar ranges of outcomes for that price, but Cameron Johnson will be 2% owned, and PJ Tucker will be 40% owned. So,
well, as of now, I mean, if we had the slate now,
sure. As of now, like just looking at things the way that they are sitting now, I don't know. If I have one lineup, I probably don't play PJ Tucker. If I have a whole bunch of lineups, I probably have some PJ Tucker, but I would like to have some leverage off of him and some pivots off of him as well. So I would be adding in my player pool. If we were to use the exposures that you got with your first run of 100 and you got 57% PJ Tucker, I would be looking at that and just like rapid firing in some other 3,500 power forward so that I can drop that down a little bit. I don't want 57% of any of the 3,500 forwards. So give me a larger portfolio so I can just diversify at that position so that I can decrease the amount of volatility that I have, but still make good competitive lineups.
Right. Or you could choose the opposite. I mean, like I said, what you're discussing is a matter of diversification. PJ Tucker will project the best median wise. So you could decide instead of taking on the distributing your volatility, you would just embrace it and go, I'm just going to lock in PJ Tucker.
And just be a masochist about it. Just hate yourself.
Just like, you don't mind cutting yourself at this point. he has 2 games that are 7Xs the entire season. I was shocked. There's one game of 34 and one game of 30. They came off. It's not even like steals and blocks games. 5 assists. How did he get 5 assists? 5 for 7 from 3. Like all of his shots are always like these are corner threes, right?
You know what's happening tonight. He's going for 35 tonight. And it's going to suck.
His cousin's playing tonight. What's going on? He's getting traded, yet they say
I think he's out. I think I saw somebody say that he's out.
Okay. And the Rockets don't even care about playing a center, so who knows?
Yeah, I mean, they have played Jayshawn Tate. They've played. Man, this slate is going to be brutal. Yeah, so there's no Boogie Cousins. So PJ Tucker is going to skyrocket up in ownership. He's going to be 75% in the 600. It's going to be terrible.
C. Carter NYC in chat says Tucker could be the only one playing for Houston, and I would still not be interested because he'd still have no usage. He'd be the only one on the court and still not be able to create his own shot. He
would play 48 minutes and play great defense, though.
Right,
great defense.
Right, he'd be the only one on the court. He'd give that. He'd cover everyone on the court 5-on-1, no problem. But on offense, all he does is take the ball to the corner and just stand there.
The Rockets would probably cover the spread if he was the only one playing.
Right. So if you got any questions in the YouTube chat, feel free, type them in. Hit that thumbs up button. You know, I got the apple juice. Still got some apple juice left over here. Keep those thumbs going for the apple juice. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. We'll have Grinders live tonight at 6:30. It's an 8 o'clock slate tonight, and then crunch time for premium members at 7:30. So subscribe to YouTube. Sign up for RotoGrinders Premium. Hit the link in the description to get $10 off your first month. Let's see. Going through the YouTube chat. Someone's asking, why did so many top players fade Jokic last night? I didn't and paid the price. Jokic was owned last night.
It was 36% owned.
Right.
Let's see. I don't know. I'll go and look at backlogs really quick. I don't think that I was necessarily super high on him. I liked Joel Embiid a lot more. I liked Giannis more. I liked Harden more. I had Jokic projected, badly, I guess. No, it couldn't have been that bad. How was he?
It's not like Jokic was 10% owned. Jokic was in plenty of lineups.
Yeah. He was in plenty of lineups. I didn't project 52. He had 23% projected ownership. They're just like, when you looked at the slate yesterday, I think that paying for Jokic was kind of, I mean, like I said, I had a different roster construction. I had mid-range yesterday, so I didn't.
Well, I mean, Jared Allen got the center spot. I mean, on DraftKings, when you have only only eligible players, they can only fit in 2 spots. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to play Jared Allen and Giannis, like you're not going to play. You probably don't have Jokic in that lineup.
Yeah.
Or to me, that's the reason.
Or like maybe people were paying down JaVale McGee 3,800. I don't know, but like the fact of the matter is that he was 37% owned in 100. So it's not like a whole bunch of people faded him at that point. I think that he was probably appropriately owned, right?
Right. No, that's why I said it. Like, why did so many people not have Jokic? I'm like, who didn't have Jokic? So plenty of people with Jokic.
What did you think about Fred VanVleet versus Norman Powell yesterday?
What am I supposed to think? On DraftKings, I wasn't a big fan of the Raptors prices as it was.
Sure.
On FanDuel, that's a different story. FanDuel, they someone goes to sleep before they raise prices.
Oh yeah, Norman Powell way underpriced on FanDuel yesterday.
Right, but on DraftKings, they priced everyone for Lowry to be out, and that they were. Fred VanVleet was what, like 8,700, and Siakam was 8,900. They were in the high 8,000s, and Norman Powell was like what, 6,900 or something. I'm like, I think they're efficiently priced. Yeah, any of them could go off, I guess.
Sure,
but I mean, they priced those guys as if Lowry was out, because Lowry was out. Yeah. FanDuel didn't. So, like, to me, yesterday, I wasn't interested in the Raptors at all.
Yeah. I mean, I really liked Norman Powell. He had a floor game. I can't control for that, but pretty annoying little 1v1 there. I didn't know if you had a like an actual thought between those guys, but you're right that they were pretty appropriately priced. I mean, most people yesterday on the slate were pretty appropriately priced. There was nobody that I had that was over 50% smash score T-Val. So, I mean, I thought the slate yesterday, that's why I went mid-range, because I didn't see a way. I didn't want to play Dennis Smith Jr. I didn't want to play Chris Chiozza after Tyler Johnson was out. So I played a lot of mid-range guys. And you said that you went stars and scrubs, right? Like you had
right. Yeah, I did horribly.
Yeah. weird slate, man. And that kind of thing, like it's hard to look back at that and try to figure out. Somebody posted for FanDuel, and I mean FanDuel screenshots, I kind of take a grain of salt with that, because you can play whoever you want on FanDuel anyway. But it was a lot of guys who were like 40% owned, and then guys that were like 3% owned that I never even would consider, like Darius Garland. The hell was Darius Garland last night? Just weird stuff, man.
No, I think Garland was okay. What was wrong with him?
I didn't like him.
Okay, he projected okay.
Yesterday's
slate, there weren't screaming values, so it's like everyone's efficiently priced, especially on DraftKings. It's like, okay, you can build a ton of lineups. You don't like any of them. You're building lineups, and like there's no way for me to like any lineup. So it's like, okay, everyone's in the same boat as me.
Yeah.
Max Coach 1 in the YouTube chat talking about the historical slates, which we do have on RotoGrinders. Like, I could show you. If you have Lineup HQ, if you have Premium, you can click on the date and you go back in time. Go back in time to Sunday the 21st. And it will have the actual fantasy points that are in here. Right? So you could sort by fantasy points, what we had, RG had them projected. Right? And you could find, the optimal from there. So if I clear this, let's see, let me get rid of my locks. So if I were to run what the optimal yesterday, the best possible lineup you could have made on DraftKings was Saban Lee, Halliburton, Jeffries, Aminu, Allen, Trae Young, Middleton, and Karl Anthony Towns.
I never get to that.
Right, of course not. That's not no, there's no way I get to. Yeah, but most people don't get to that either. 385.75. But he's asking about the ownership. We're working, I believe the Lineup HQ team is working on a way to also get ownership in here. But remember, if we get actual ownership, we have to pull it from some contest. So most likely it would have to be whatever the large field contest is, right? Because obviously ownership is different from contest to contest. So I think it just comes down to figuring out how to do that. Because really the more thing that we're caring about is just getting the actual fantasy points. So if you wanted to go back and, test builds out and go, well, I could switch from actual fantasy points. I can't even switch from that and then upload. I can't even upload from there. So now you have to use actual fantasy points.
Tragic.
Right. So you go, well, I had these exposures and whatever. Could I have gotten to that lineup? Could I have gotten to the winning lineup? Using it and experimenting like that. So if you wanted to, it's available to you. Lineup HQ, RotoGrinders Premium. Click on the link in the description for $10 off your first month.
I do want to point out that sometimes it's not a good idea to try super hard to rebuild the winning lineup, because if you adjusted your process to build the lineup from last night, that's scary, man. That's scary for your future prospects. Because there's some slates where good players just would never have landed on that. You would never have landed on that job. In 600 lineups, you wouldn't have had the winning lineup last night.
No, of course not.
And so like
in
your
3,000 lineups, I wouldn't have had.
Your process is pretty good too. Like you are a very winning player. And so I think that is something overfitting. If you're overfitting not only like your regular process, but also your mental models of being like, oh, well, I definitely should have considered Aminu last night. You shouldn't have. But there's so many people that look at the winning lineup and try to come back from that. And that's why you and I always preach, go to results database and look at what good players did. Don't look at the winning lineup. Like you have no reason to go look at what won. You should go look at the people who play and do this for a living and have a positive ROI over long term, and not just look at, oh, I should have played Al-Farouq Aminu last night. That doesn't really do you much good.
Right. It just says that, oh, I guess I need to bang my head against the keyboards to select players every night. If I get lucky. I mean, like that is what it is. In the YouTube chat, Tim Yang asks, is it smart to make a tournament lineup and put it in all my cash games? That way I can be first in my cash, and if I win all of them. That's the opposite way of thinking. Like, no, you play cash lineups and cash games. You play tournament lineups and tournaments. Cash games are meant for median lineups. You don't want to win. Winning a double up gets you the same amount of money as coming in 45th place, right? I mean, like, you don't have to win your double ups. It's a waste to win your double. And in fact, you probably screwed up if you won your double ups, right? If you come in first and you more likely, I want to come in right in the middle.
The old adage of putting your cash game lineup in your GPPs just in case you land on the nuts. Like, you're probably not building the right cash lineups. If you
this guy's asking the reverse.
I know, but like
the reverse makes no sense. At least the cash. Okay, you want to throw your cash lineup into some 150 entry, like 100 field, like small
different.
field stuff. Okay, fine. I can get that.
Right? But not a 15. Don't do that.
No, not the large field stuff. Probably not. And then you don't do the reverse. You definitely don't the reverse.
Never do the reverse. Don't play the 2% owned freaking Facundo Campazzo in your cash game lineup, hoping to bink. You don't win anything extra for binking in your cash games. If you're playing like a quad up, or if you're playing like a 3-man, then you have to get a little bit different sometimes. But you're not trying to win cash games. You're just trying to beat the majority of the contest so that you can beat out the rake and pull in your 7 to 9% over the accrue of the year. You're not trying to win them. Don't play GPP lineups in cash.
Free Copyright Music asks that I'm assuming that's not his real name. Will you think about making a video going through your entire process for a GPP lineup, ultimately ending up with 1, 2, or several lineups so we can see the result you come up with? I do that I've done that in premium videos, but behind the paywall. I've explained stuff. I've done it in the how I won whatever videos, right? I mean, I explain the process even this show. Like, it's not that it's really not that complicated. It's just a matter of you can't do anything until like a half an hour before lock. So, like, there's nothing for me to do now. That's why I say, based on the current assessment that I'm looking at it through the projections that aren't even updated or manually adjusted at all, that you're probably paying up at point guard and paying down at power forward and small forward. And then next thing you know, some guard value and some value opens up and like the whole thing changes, right? John Wall's also out. It's looks like we're jamming in all the Rockets again, right? And then except for PJ Tucker, maybe you're like, right? Lillard's out. Okay, now what? I mean, anything could happen. The coaches are lying all the time. We never know. So it's kind of hard for me to have that type of process video like at the time, because like, when the hell am I doing it? I'm doing it for I'm going to build 5 lineups tonight for GPP, and I'm going to be doing it it's an 8:00 slate. I'll be doing it at 7:30, right? I'll be looking through results. I'll be looking through lineup HQ, pressing some buttons. Remember, I'm focusing more on small field play, so I'm not building like multi-entry builds as much, right? If I'm playing 100 lineups, yeah, sure, yeah, then I'm building in lineup HQ. But because I could visualize the constructions, I don't need to necessarily go, click there and take this guy out. Like, the stuff that I do show, it's more for explanatory purposes. I could look and go, I know this lineup projects well, and I know that I have enough leverage. I could tell. It's like I'm playing 4 of these guys that project well, and this guy here, and flipping that construction, and this guy's going to be 3% owned. I'm good. There you go. Lock it all in, and then go to the next lap and go, okay, well, I'm going to take a different approach. I'm going to flip this way and do, okay, that should work. Okay, done. Go to the next one. And it's not that complicated. I think people James, I think we even say in the course that the more you understand the concept that you really grasp the game theory concepts, playing DFS almost becomes simpler.
Oh yeah.
Like people tend to overthink, well, do I do this and this, and there's so many options or whatever. It's like a lot of game theory is removing the things that really don't matter much and focusing on the 2 or 3 things for that slate, that sport, that instance that matter the most. On this slate, it could be, James, the decision that matters the most on this slate could be whether or not you play PJ Tucker.
And it probably will be.
Right. If that's what matters the most, then spend most of your time on what matters the most. Mm-hmm. On little fringe things, or how many of this, how many should I have 38 players in my pool? Should I have 34 players? It's likely not going to matter. Those types of things. Say maybe over the course of a year, you're leaking away 0.2% ROI by doing something not as efficient or something like that. But like if you don't grasp projection, correlation, and leverage, like you're dead. Like you're just like now you're just banging your head against the keyboard. And you have Al-Farouq Aminu and whoever in your lineup. He did start at least, James. It's not stupid. Aminu at least started. Right?
Yeah.
What was that winning lineup? I'm going to bring that up on Results DB right now.
I had him projected for 12 fantasy points. So
it was RBX that won.
Oh, of course it was.
Facundo Campazzo and Al-Farouq Aminu.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But he started for 3K. I can't be upset about that.
He had a T-ball of 17%. He's basically the same play as Malik Monk, and I was trashing Malik Monk earlier. So
right.
There you go.
Right. I likely never make this lineup,
and that's okay because there's slate today.
Right. Right. Exactly. Right. This is late today.
People get bogged down and think that they need to win every slate, and I am here to tell you that no, you are going to win hopefully a couple slates a year.
Right, that's all you right, max. Right.
Yeah.
You'll lose 90% of the time. I'm perfectly fine. Yep. And if especially RBX, anytime I see RBX win and it's some weird lineup, I just go, I'm just never going to get that dude.
Well, I was praising Big T the other day after he had like that 120 whatever win on FanDuel. I was praising him because like that dude, he takes stands. And like he doesn't have any shame in the stance that he takes. And like when he hits big. And that's great. Like that.
And when he doesn't, he loses big also. So like
exactly.
There's going to be swings. So it's not all screenshots and rainbows, but all you have to do is win big once or twice a year and you're way positive for the year. So who cares?
Yeah. If a player like Big T or a player like you or a player like me hits 4 times a year, like positive ROI year. There you go. That's all. That's all you need. And
right,
like,
but do you even need that anymore with Top Shots? Do you even need that anymore?
Everybody's a millionaire on Top Shots, dude.
Apparently, Top Shots is like, you know how the joke is that no one loses at NBA DFS?
Yeah,
apparently no one loses at NBA Top Shots.
And everybody can eventually, in 2024, when you can withdraw your money, like you'll have millions of dollars.
When possibly that you could possibly get your fake money out of whatever that is. Right, of course. Yeah. I get it.
Perfect.
Perfectly fine. Let's see. C. Carter says, since listening to Blender over the month, I've won small field tourneys for learning and took down 3 on Yahoo so far and 1 on DK. And
nice.
Binge watch his videos. Yes. Binge watch my videos and get the theory of daily fantasy sports. It's a 15-hour audio masterclass. The entire game theory of DFS for any sport. It's not just NBA, anything. The chapters like, game objectives, player selection, expected value, leverage, correlation, construction, risk management, exploits, psychology. Like it's meant for, you could play PGA, LOL, it doesn't matter. It's me and James, right? Me and James, it's 15 hours of audio. It's a good structured education. If you don't understand some of these concepts, or you want to get better, and this is the course that teaches you how to fish, right? We're not giving you fish, we're teaching you how to fish, and then you can fish for yourself. So pick that up. Obviously, I answer any questions you want here. James is on every Monday on the pregame show. We talk about concepts. You could, if you don't want to buy it, don't buy it. Like you could get everything you want out of my show, out of his shows. But if you want a reference guide in your pocket, play on the phone, play on any podcast player, do whatever you want with, go pick it up. So theoryofdfs.com. And James, you have stuff going on at PayDirt, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So you can find all my stuff over at paydirt.ghost.io. I am currently trying to continue working through the NBA Optimizer, which is still in beta form, but it's come a long way, which is cool. Hopefully done for the end of the year. League of Legends starting back up for full slates, Counter-Strike every night. Call of Duty is back. Have baseball right around the corner. So really, really excited about continuing to build for subscribers over at PayDirt. And there's plenty of free tools over there too. The historical ranges tool lets you search through players and teams and stuff like that and see what their medians and their standard deviations are. And there's a defensive efficiency metrics tool, which shows you which teams give up the most to other teams. Like it's a cool place to be. So go check it out.
Okay. You could also follow James PayDirt_DFS on Twitter. I'm blenderhd, blenderhd on Twitter. And who knows what's going to happen tonight, but check out Grinders Live. Hopefully we don't have to play PJ Tucker, but I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to be playing PJ Tucker tonight. So hopefully he doesn't. It may be one of those where power forward ends up being a snowflake position anyway. So PJ Tucker getting there for like 18. Like, okay, great. I got 18 from PJ Tucker. Or if you fade him, he goes for 30. It's always one of those things, right? You play him at 6, and then if you fade him, it's 30, right? I just hope we get some news or something where we don't have to play PJ Tucker. So good luck to everyone playing PJ Tucker tonight, and we'll talk about the constructions tomorrow, like I do every weekday, Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, here on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.